Welcome to another episode of the Market Makers in Middle East and Africa podcast. Today I speak to a very special guest, Danny Sebright, the president of the US and UAE Business Council. Danny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here today.
Yeah. Danny, you have a very successful career, both in private services and the public services. Tell us about your story and how you became the president of US and UAE Business Council.
Well, I spent 20 years in the U.S. government working a lot of time overseas. I started in China and Hong Kong. I spent a number of years in Israel and the Middle East and the West Bank. Then I spent time in India and in South Africa. And at each of these moments with my government career, I was there at critical times. I was there at critical moments in history in these countries. And so it was wonderful being a U.S. diplomat during those years, representing my country. I went to the private sector then to work for the former Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, in his advisory firm, the Cohen Group in Washington. And during that time, I also became very close with senior UAE leaders in Abu Dhabi, particularly Yusuf Al-Ateba, the ambassador in the U.S., who was working for Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed at the time. And we started working together already in 1999 and 2000 and have been close friends ever since. That's how I blended the private and the public career. And basically, the things that I learned in the private career, in the public career with government, helped me be a better advisor to business in the public career.
Wow, very interesting journey, Danny. So tell us more about US and UAE Business Council. What's the kind of the grand vision and what you try to accomplish? And share us some numbers or what has happened till now.
Well, I could just say very quickly that in the beginning of the 2000s, when the UAE developed its 2031 plan and 2030 plans, they had a very grand vision of what they wanted the UAE to become, and the leadership had the desire to work very closely with the United States. This was important and critical to the success of the plans. We had some political things that happened, after 9/11 and the beginning of the Gulf War, that required a business council to be created that would represent and share the voice of business in these discussions with the political leaders and make political leaders better understand and be more realistic about how important this business relationship was. That's how we began. That's why we began. And now we've just built from strength. We've gone from strength to strength. We started with 30 members. We're over 250 members, big corporates, even some medium-sized, smaller companies. What makes us different from everyone else is we are the bilateral council between the two countries. So our membership is about half American and half Emirati. So the big names in the US and the big names in the UAE are our membership today, the corporate names.
Perfect. Danny, thank you very much for the answer. What are the primary objectives? What do you try to drive in the Business Council? And what do you have accomplished when it comes to promoting the trade between UAE and US?
So I would say, first and foremost, it's a better understanding. It's better understanding of what are the UAE's objectives. It's better understanding what are the US objectives, and finding that place in the middle where the two sides can come together. When we have mutual objectives that we both want to achieve, it makes a much better chance of success for the future. So our goal every day is to provide reliable, accurate information about what are the opportunities and what are the challenges. We work very closely with our business council members, all the corporate members, to understand what they bring to the table. What UAE companies want to invest in the US and in what verticals? What US companies want to export and sell and come to the UAE and in what verticals? Then we work with the governments, both governments, very close relationships on both sides to help figure out the policy restrictions, the policy enablers, the things that will help drive the relationship to take down some of the barriers and push some of the enablers forward.
Mm-hmm. And if you talk about, you said, the promising sectors. Mm-hmm. So what are the promising sectors for US companies in UAE and vice versa when UAE companies wants to invest in US?
I'll just stay with the numbers for a second, that we have in 2023 all but $25 billion in exports from the U.S. to the UAE. This is up almost 20% from 2022. So far, in the beginning of 2024, we're up 9% from last year's numbers on the same beginning of the half of the year. So the trade relationship just keeps growing and growing and growing. And even during COVID, we had a little bit of a dip down, but it came right back up after the first year of COVID and kept the upward trajectory. So very, very important. Today, while it's a traditional oil and gas country with energy, it's as much about the energy mix, renewables, nuclear, wind, solar, and how we make oil and gas more efficient. That's one vertical that we're very involved and engaged in. We work very closely with ADNOC. We work very closely with Masdar, with ENIC, the nuclear provider. We were part of the beginning of the nuclear program all the way through here in the UAE, working to bring American providers and suppliers. We're also obviously very much focused on the tech sector, everything from AI to digital enablement to the cloud, to how AI helps make everything more efficient in the future, very involved in that sector. Healthcare and life sciences has exploded for us. American healthcare providers and pharma companies wanting to come here, do new research and development, innovation, clinical trials, actually producing pharma for the future here. Very, very important to what the UAE wants to achieve with building a global hub in this area for the future. And then finally, I'd say the last 2 or 3 years, we've gotten very involved in helping promote the U.S.-UAE cooperation in the area of space. We are working with the Emiratis on all of their programs to go back to Mars, to go to the moon, and beyond, to the asteroids. And we work closely with the U.S. government, with NASA and other research institutes to help create those partnerships that will enable the Emiratis to achieve their goals. Those are the 4 or 5 clusters that we're most focused on. But then we do things like Emirates and Etihad and the airlines and other areas. You asked about investments in the U.S. The UAE is very focused at the moment on investments, not only in traditional spaces like real estate and hospitality, but also in things like tech, like the digital space. They have almost $20 billion investment in building and creating and manufacturing the world's most advanced microchips at global foundries in upstate New York. They have new energy investments with ADNOC in Texas, with Masdar in a number of new clean energy investments.
I mean, that's very kind of interesting and vast in scale. Danny, how does this partnership in trade drives the innovation and the entrepreneurship in UAE?
Well, let's put it this way. The Emiratis and we working together came to the conclusion a number of years ago that if they wanted to create a Silicon Valley here, if they wanted to create an Austin or a Boston with everything that goes around those ecosystems, starting with education at the secondary level with STEM, starting with the university system, starting with research and developments and science and technology. If you want to build this ecosystem, if you want to achieve these goals and objectives for the future, you have to work at every level to build the partnerships. We're involved with everything from education all the way up through creating the opportunities for, as I said, for the research and development, for clinical trials, creating new IP. I've had conversations with the Emiratis 5 or 6 years ago about if you want to become a center, a global center for the world, you have to create original intellectual property here. You can't just copy and paste it from the United States. You have to create a homegrown ecosystem where people from all over the Middle East region, Africa, India, China can come and work with you to create new and innovative intellectual property for the future.
I mean, that's very interesting. Then renewable energy, when it comes to innovation, now we know that UAE produces a lot of oil and gas, but how is renewable energy part of the Business Council and how you are promoting that?
So just think at the beginning, the Business Council started in 2006. Masdar was created very soon after we were created. So from the very beginning, Masdar became one of our priorities within the Business Council to help them on their journey to create clean energy, not just for the UAE, but as a model for others in the world to follow, that clean energy mix. We created the Emirates nuclear program. In 2008 and 2009, we've helped get the first nuclear deal approved by the U.S. in the U.S. Congress. Now remember, this is 6 years after 9/11, and we helped convince the U.S. Congress that it was okay to sell nuclear technology to this country because they were going to adopt a 1-2-3 program and forswear enrichment and only stay with peaceful nuclear energy. We've been very part of this program from the very, very beginning. So for the UAE, it's not just about oil and gas. It's creating the energy mix for the future. Because, my friend, that's the only way we're going to solve climate change is to embrace and work in all the energy verticals, not just one or two.
Yeah, and Danny, you mentioned about the trade, but there is one important thing when it comes to relationship, which is the cultural exchange, the understanding the cultures, the education exchange. So how was Business Council promoting or helping in these areas?
You would be surprised the number of CEOs who call me and say, now, Danny, I'm flying to Abu Dhabi or Dubai on Saturday night or Sunday morning. I'm going to get there on Monday and have my first meeting. Tuesday, some more meetings. I'd like to sign the deal by Wednesday and be able to come home on Thursday back to the United States and have the business done. So the work that we do starts with the basic orientation of how business is done here, even with the top, most educated, most nuanced CEOs, understanding that it's about building relationships in this part of the world. And business starts with building a relationship, and it doesn't start with a transaction. I'm not going to say to you that there isn't the occasional transaction that gets done very quickly when it's necessary, but 80 or 90% of the business is done by building a relationship. And that's the first thing that I teach and I educate my businesses, American ones, about in the UAE. And on the UAE side, I have to educate them about how business is done in the United States, which is on a little bit more of a faster track. And it's a little bit harder for the businesses to come here when it's halfway around the world. And so they have to go there and build the relationships there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. And on the education side?
On the education side, we work really closely with bringing name American brands to the UAE. I first worked with New York University when it was just starting to come to the UAE. And Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed at that time wanted to bring an institution that was the most how should I say, forward-looking, maybe even liberal in the United States to show that it had a place and could create a culture in a place like Abu Dhabi. New York University, Abu Dhabi is now thriving there and has become a center with record number of even now a Nobel Prize laureate, Rhodes Scholars, record number of graduates who are just at the top of their class. Really, really important to the future. We work with Georgetown University on creating the MBA program here in Dubai, and that's become very successful. They're now starting their third cohort of students just in the last 3 years. Very, very important. We work with all the Emirati institutions, the key ones, in helping them build up their STEM programs and other things they're doing in these areas and attracting the best-in-class Americans, professors, and others that will come help work with them in their programs, and American businesses that will support them along the way.
Mm-hmm. And Danny, this looks very good, but you might have faced some challenges. So what challenges you face when it comes to kind of navigating both countries, cultures, policymakers? So what are those?
Again, as I said earlier, the main challenge we face is ignorance and a lack of information. I tell my team, we wake up every morning with the goal and objective of providing more accurate, true information, not information somewhere off the internet that was made up by some AI bot or something like that, but true facts. We provide as accurate of information as possible on what are the opportunities in the relationship, what are the goals and objectives of each country, and where is that magic in the middle where we can work together. So countering disinformation, both at the political level and the private sector level, is very important. Making sure that the relationship doesn't get caught in the middle of fights in politics that go on in the U.S. between Republicans and Democrats, particularly during a presidential season, which I call right now in Washington the silly season. We're in the middle of the silly season in Washington, and it's very easy to find yourself in the middle of that when for no reason whatsoever. So we're constantly working to prevent that.
Perfect. Now, it's a very important time as well, when it comes to trade between two countries. How do you see it now, and anything major, or how do you see the future in terms of the trade going on for both countries?
For both Republicans and Democrats in the United States, the issue of China and China's future in the world, and as a competitor to the United States, is critical. So this is a constant theme.
And what collaboration you see when it comes to the emerging technology? You touched base that UAE wants to be a hub of industries, hub of innovation center, hub for as you said, building IPs. So how do you see that, and how is US helping in that?
So as I said, Austin, Boston, and Silicon Valley were not built in a day. Maybe Rome was, but not those three. And we're working with the Emiratis to create the entire ecosystem that will surround and support their goal and objective of being a number one. I say a city state. So I say Abu Dhabi, a city state in 10 years, one of the leading 10 cities in the world that is a hub and a creator of innovation. We're working at every level to help the UAE and the US partnership create this, because those kinds of allies for the United States for the future are only going to make the United States stronger as well.
Mm-hmm. And do you see technology or sharing technology kind of a significant part of driving that?
Absolutely, it has to be. The Emiratis have to build their base and their knowledge and know-how. They have amazing talent in this region that they're harnessing and focusing, not just from the UAE, but from Palestine, from Jordan, from Lebanon, from Syria, from wherever. They have amazing talent pool here in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi and in Sharjah. So helping them build that talent pool and create the baseline for where new innovation can come is what we're working on, and where we think the U.S. can help them.
Mm-hmm. Now, coming to you, Danny, you have got the Paul H. Ritze Award for Excellence in International Security Policy. Tell us about that and how it has shaped your, leadership and the understanding.
So the Paul Nitze Award is an award given every year to innovative, dynamic leaders in the Pentagon for helping broker change and bring about positive change in our international relationships. I was given that award primarily for things that I did in the U.S.-Israel relationship during that time that I was working in the Pentagon and helping build better understanding of what are some of the security and defense dynamics of that relationship. The award really helped me understand that diplomacy rests on a whole lot of legs of the stool, if you will. That a good relationship between two countries is not just about the political leaders having a good relationship, but it's about business, it's about strategy, it's about the economy, it's about healthcare, it's about education. And that award, then after I won that award, they sent me to Harvard. The Defense Department sent me to Harvard for a year at the Kennedy School, and I did the mid-career program. And those two things together really, really, really harnessed me, prepared me for the next level of my career when I was 40 years old to take the next steps.
Mm-hmm. And then you are involved with various advisory boards, and you are also part of Institute of Strategic Studies. Tell us about that and how you kind of shape the next generation of leaders.
So the experience that I mentioned at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government was one where at 40 years old, I was thrown in, we were thrown in the graduate program as a mid-career with some of the younger students as well. And for the first time, I realized that it wasn't just about, learning from new things from older people, but it was about me as somebody now at 40 years old who was starting to become an older person, being able to give back and give my experiences and my learning back to the younger folks. So as I've gone through the last 20 years of my career, that's become more and more important to me. So I work with the International Institute of Strategic Studies. I work with Harvard. I work with Gettysburg College, which is close to where I grew up. I work with Georgetown and GW in Washington to try to give back to students, to try to be a resource, to give them career advice, to give them internships with the Business Council, to help them find internships with other companies and things like that. But giving back, giving back, giving back is so important as you get older, because if the younger generations don't learn from the mistakes we made, they're just going to keep making them over and over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. And Danny, what motivates you? I mean, this is a very important rule. I mean, it impacts the trade or, the businesses in two countries, which has a lot of impact on people and on humanity. What motivates you doing this work, which is definitely, very challenging? And what leadership principles guides you?
So what motivates me every morning is when I wake up and understand that I'm doing something positive that affects the future in a good way. There's so much negativity out there. There's so much divisiveness out there, again, in the United States and other countries in Europe, particularly in the political side. And when I can come to a country like this, when I can come to a few other countries in the world and I see the vision, when I see the resource and I see the commitment to get things done, it's very inspiring to me. Now, nowhere is perfect. Everywhere has its problems. But in a young country like this, you can see sometimes more positivity and more opportunity for the future sometimes than you can in a place where there's so much division going on. I hope that the U.S. and other countries in Europe are going to turn the corner on this in the next few years. But in the meantime, I'm helping build a relationship for the future that's very, very important to the world's future. What the UAE did here for COP28, what they did here for Expo, just shows that they want to be a leader for positive change in the future. And I like being part of that.
Mm-hmm. And my last question, what leadership principles guides you?
Well, that's a tough one. I learned a lot of leadership principles at Harvard. Good communication skills matter. Sleep is important. Trying to inspire our youth in a positive way is very important to me. I don't always do the best job of it, but waking up every morning, I try. I used to get up every morning and come in the office in the car, and now I don't come to the office as much, but I'd come in the car and I'd push the elevator button in the garage coming up, and I would force myself to say the words, "There's always time to be nice today." And I think that's true with everybody you deal with, through the taxi driver, the president, the CEO, the secretary, the person who's getting your coffee. There's always time to be nice and respectful every day to every person. And I'm not perfect at it. I fall down and I make mistakes, but that's a leadership principle that I try to remind myself of every day.
Danny, pleasure to have you, and it's really an honor to host you. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate the time today and telling a little bit about our story.
Yeah, thank you, Danny.